Well, good afternoon, folks. Welcome back to What's Cooking in Bert's Kitchen. Today we're going to make a Southern classic, great for a Sunday dinner. It's going to take a little while to make it, but you're going to be very, very happy that you learned this recipe. Good old-fashioned chicken and dumplings. First thing we got to do, get a good pot. Going to start with a nice cast iron Dutch oven. Okay? Into that pot, first thing we're going to place is a few pounds of chicken. I happen to have some chicken legs here. I bought those big packages of chicken legs, cut the thighs off. I was left with all these drumsticks, used it to make fried chicken, etc., etc. I had a whole bunch left over. Gonna make some chicken and dumplings. So we got chicken in there. Next thing we're going to need is some water. You want to put just enough water to cover your chicken. I started with 3 cups. Looks like I'm going to need about 4. Because I've got a little bit more chicken here than I originally thought. But either way, you want just enough water to cover the chicken. Make sure you get everything down in there. Now, before you touch anything else, I want you to wash those grimy chicken hands, because chicken carries a lot of diseases, specifically salmonella, very easily transferred to the vegetables that we're going to cut up next. So, please, wash your hands thoroughly anytime you touch raw chicken. Okay, hands now thoroughly washed. The next thing we're going to do here, first of all, get a little heat on this. Put it up to medium-high heat, 6, 7. If your guide on your oven goes up to 10. We're going to need to add some vegetables to this. Carrots, celery. Absolutely necessary for this recipe. If you want to throw some onion in there, please be my guest. In this case, I'm not doing it. Peel 3 carrots. Get rid of the ends, as such. As I taught you before with using an onion, keep your fingers curled under so that you cannot cut your fingertips off, and simply slice them into nice rounds, 1/4 inch thick. Perfectly fine. Make sure you've got a good sharp knife, because if you're working with a dull knife, that's how you're going to get cut. So there's our carrots. Get them right into the pot. Dealing with the celery. Now, you've got these green leafy bits on the top. They're actually very good. If you keep them, stick them in a Ziploc bag, throw them in the fridge or the freezer. You can throw them in with your stock for flavoring. Whole nother show, though. So we got rid of that stuff. We don't want them in this dish. Again, same deal here. Just chop down your celery in to 1/2 inch pieces. And be very careful when you get down to the end. Make sure you're paying attention. That also into the pot. Now, other things we need to add to this, fair bit of salt. It's probably close to a tablespoon there, or excuse me, a teaspoon. And probably half a teaspoon of some good black pepper. You don't necessarily have to have a pepper grinder and do the fresh ground. I just happen to have it in my hands. So here we go. And I missed my morning workout this morning. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this to a simmer. And once it starts simmering, we're going to turn the heat down just a little bit, keep it simmering, put a lid on it, and let it go for about an hour, because that chicken's really got to cook. At least an hour. An hour and a half is preferable, but an hour will do. Then we're going to take that chicken out, let it cool, so that we can chop it up later, add it back in, and we'll turn this stock into some gravy. Okay, so our stew has been simmering about half an hour now. At this point, we want to remove the lid. That way the sauce will have a little time to reduce and the flavors will intensify. It's gotten most of its flavor out of the chicken. We're waiting for the chicken to finish cooking all the way. Now we want those flavors to intensify. We're going to let it boil down for about another half an hour or so. But you see that it's on a nice light simmer, not boiling away rapidly. That's not what we're trying to do here. We want it to simmer, and it's going to reduce down, oh, probably by about a quarter. Okay, so our chicken's been simmering for about an hour now. The last half hour we took the lid off. It's reduced quite a bit. Next thing we want to do is we want to get the chicken out of the broth, let it set aside. Best thing for that, a nice set of tongs. So there's our chicken out. Stock is still simmering nicely. Dumplings, basically just a nice, simple, easy dough that we're going to stick in there to boil. Give it 10 or 15 minutes. Boom. They'll fluff up. They'll be nice and tender. You'll be very happy with this. First thing we'll need is a bowl in which to mix our ingredients. We're going to start with 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour. There we are, 3/4 of a cup. Then we're going to want 1/4 cup of cornmeal. In this case, I'm using white. You want to use yellow, that's fine by me. Now you're going to need some leavening to get them to pop up. You're going to want 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. To that, we want to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt, quite a bit of black pepper, about 3/4 of a teaspoon. Again, you can get it right out of the tin. I just happen to have this grinder right here. Nothing like a good afternoon bicep workout. Mix that all together really well. If there's any lumps in there, break them up. I could have sifted this, but I'm just used to working this way. Now, the next thing we need to add is some butter. You're going to want 2 tablespoons of really cold butter. Very important. It's very important that it's really, really cold. cut it down into little pieces. I tend to use a steak knife for this, especially when you're dealing with solid butter. A little easier to deal with. Take your little pieces, sprinkle them throughout there. Now, you're going to want to work them in to your dough. You could use a pastry cutter. You could use a couple of forks. Personally, I'm just as good doing it with my hand. However, you want to work quick because your body temperature being 96 degrees, you're going to warm that butter up a little bit much. Now, if you notice that your butter has just gotten a little bit too soft when you're doing this, once you're done, stick it back in the fridge. You want to break it down, get it mixed up so the butter is well distributed and everything's kind of grainy, sort of like the consistency of breadcrumbs. You'll notice the difference as opposed to sifted flour. So there we are. We've worked it really quick. We've got that. Now for the liquid component. 2/3 of a cup of buttermilk. In this case, I'm not using buttermilk. I like a slightly different flavor. I'm using 2/3 of a cup of milk with a tablespoon of red wine vinegar poured into it. It'll give you the same acidic consistency, but a different kind of flavor. I happen to like it. Add it a little bit at a time. And mix it in very gently. Just till it starts to come together. Because you don't want to overmix this. Your dumplings will come out like pencil erasers. So you don't want to mix this overly much. So here we have that. Now we can add some other flavor components to this. A few tablespoons of chives. You can chop fresh. I happen to have some dried ones here. Chance to get rid of some of the things around in my pantry. And a couple tablespoons of parsley. Again, fresh is perfectly fine. I happen to have the dried. Get them in there just till they're combined. We don't want to overmix this dough. So there we have our dumpling mix. Next thing we're going to want is a little ice cream scoop, like this. This will keep everything consistent. Get them here. Drop them right into your simmering liquid. Don't overcrowd them. Don't put them right on top of each other. Amazing how something so simple can be so delicious. And you'll probably get about a baker's dozen or so out of this. So there we go. We're going to let them put a lid back on it. Let them go for about 10 minutes.